I'll now talk about React Native, which is a framework we can use to build mobile applications using the JavaScript programming language, aka Node.js. Traditionally, these applications are divided into separate systems, one for iOS, one for Android. And if you were to do it the kind of original way, you would have to either use Java or now Kotlin to build an Android app, and then for Objective-C or now Swift to build the iOS. So typically the companies would have separate teams building separate apps for that. But then, of course, why not use the same code base to build one app for both systems? That's the requirement that spawned this framework, React Native. And instead of either using Swift or uh, Kotlin to build the app, you actually build it with JavaScript or Node.js. Okay, so we're gonna need Node.js installed. That should come with npm. And then you're gonna go to the terminal. Let's open here. VS Code. I'm gonna open a new terminal here. And let me make sure. Okay. So I'm gonna do npx space create-expo-app at latest space dash dash template space blank. And this command will ask you the name of your app. We can just call it mobile client or something. And you can see the mobile directory has been created. Basically, this command allows us to generate a project for React Native without us having to manually write all the code for the boilerplate to make it work. So it's very convenient. Okay, once that is done, you can cd to mobile. And if you notice the mobile directory here has a package JSON with all the dependencies already set for this project. And what we're interested in is running the start command here, which basically calls expo start. So you can run npm start, and that should power up the development server. And if you scroll up, that my thing is too small, but if you scroll up here, you'll see this QR code. Now, what you have to do now is you need a smartphone and you're going to install the app called Expo. That's the link. Okay, so make sure to install that. So I already installed Expo on my smartphone. Today I'm demonstrating with the iPhone, which is iOS. Should be similar to Android. Here's my phone screen. You can see Expo Go app has been installed, and I can click that to see it's open. Okay, so typically we can do it using the camera app to scan the QR code. So what we got to do is remember that QR code from the development server here. You're gonna use your camera app on your phone and you're gonna scan this QR code. And it should bring you to the Expo app when you click the label. Okay, so let me demonstrate. Do you see my camera app? I'm gonna open it. You see I'm scanning that. I see open in Expo Go. I'm gonna click that. And it should load the app on my phone. Okay, you should see open up app.js to start working on your app. One detail is make sure that your phone is connected to the same network as your computer that is running the development server. If you're not running your smartphone connected to the same like Wi-Fi as the computer that's running the development server, they cannot connect. So in that case, what you can do is, if you have that problem, you can go to the package.json file, locate your start script. You can change that. Okay, you can add the dash dash tunnel option. Okay, so if you do that, then Control C to stop the server here, and then you do npm start again, it should call with the dash dash tunnel option. And that option is pretty much going to make this development server available anywhere you are. You can be in a separate network on your phone and it will still work. So you can see the address here has been changed. So all you got to do is scan it with the camera app the same way, and then it should work. Let me know if everybody got it working, because we need to have this working before we can proceed. In my case, I don't have a problem with the tunneling, so I'm gonna remove it. And I'm gonna Control C and restart my development server. Okay, so I'm gonna go on now. So in React Native, we are interested in this directory app.js. So React Native, from the name itself, has React. So if we have learned the React library for the web, we can do the same pattern for mobile. So as you can see in React, we have components that we define as functions. So here in app.js, we have the app component defined as a function here, and that returns the JSX, which looks like HTML, for what you will see. Now, in the world of React Native, we don't have specific HTML tags like div, paragraph, UL, and so on. We do have separate names for things. For example, for a generic container, we use a view. To show some inline text, we use text, and etc. So if you change anything here, for example, I change the content between the open and closing tag for text to hello world, and I should be able to see in real time as I save this in my phone that has been changed. Okay, so let me go back there. Let me rescan my thing because I changed to tunnel and back. You can see now from my shared screen that the text changed from what the previous one to hello world. So whenever you change the source code and save, it should automatically transfer that to the device. I noticed somebody just came in. If you are lost, let me know. I can backtrack and let you know how to do the stuff. I pasted the links, not the links, the instructions to the Zoom chat if you're lost. Going on, for styling, we would use the style property passed to the component, and it can be just an object here of property names. Now, the property names are not necessarily with the dash case like CSS. It's in camel case because we're dealing with JavaScript. So in this case, what they're doing is they're using styles.container. So styles is defined here at the bottom as a variable. That's the return value of the stylesheet.create function. Now, this function is just returning basically an object that you can use there. So you didn't really have to use this, although they recommend in the documentation. So the way you do is just create an object, create a key, as though it were like a style sheet, a spread for CSS. And the object can have all these property values that we use for the style. So in this case, that you can think of this object here being copied over here. So this view will adopt these following styles. Okay. Now, by default, it uses Flexbox, so that's why you're seeing align items and justify content center there. And if you remove that, the message should go to the top. Okay, let me demonstrate for the text. Let's add some style. And I can pass an object there. So for the syntax, if you recall from React, the JSX syntax, the outer curly brace is for the syntax for the value for this property, whereas the inner curly brace is an actual object, literal. Let's change the color to red. So you just say color as the property, colon, and then the red as a string, because this is an object, so you have to use the property colon value syntax. So when you save that, you should be able to see a red text for hello world. Okay, so let me know if you're having trouble or not. Otherwise, I'll have to keep going. Okay, now let me demonstrate how we can add like something like a button. So you can actually use the button component that's from React Native. You can notice here that Visual Studio Code suggests me to auto import this. So if I click that, it should add button here to the list imported from React-Native. And once I do that, I have to specify here the property to give the label. In this case, it has to be title. And then this can be a self-closing tag. So you could either do like this with nothing between the open and close, or you can shorthand with the slash before the greater than for the open tag. So if you do that, you should see a button. Now, if you click it, nothing happens. Now, if you want to handle click here, you have to do on press property and pass a function. Now let's call this function on button press, and now we'll define it. Now we define it before the return value here. Function on button press. This name has to match what you type there. And then it can define the body of the function. Let's say I want to show like a message when I click the button. We can, when I, so we can keep something in the state for React that will be set to the message content. For example, when I click the button, I set a flag show message, and then the message will appear. Now to do that, we have to keep a state, keep track of a value that's either true or false. So for that, we use the React.useState hook with an initial value of false because we don't want to show the message. And then this thing will return an array of two things. One, first element being the actual reference to the value, and the second, a function that we can use to modify that value. People usually like to use the destructuring syntax, so we use const with the value there. Let me call it show message between square brackets. So we extract the first element of the array, comma, and then set show message, extract the second element, and finish off with the closing square brackets. Now we are able to keep track of this value show message that's initially false. Now, usually it's probably going to complain React is not defined. So let me save this and show you how we can debug things. Here in my share screen for the phone, you will see if you do any mistake, if you make any mistake in the code, you will see an error message. And it will tell you first we have to read at the top a render error property React does not exist. And then you read what line caused the problem. And you can see it's line 5 and it points to React, you can see there. So we know right away where to look in the code. So app.js, line 5, and then the right-hand side of the colon is 41 is the column. Okay, so we would go back to the code. Go up here and we import React from quotes React. You're also going to see use state being used without going through React. If you want to do it that way, you would go here and do the named import here, use state between the curly braces if you want to do it that way. Okay, once I save it, I will no longer see, should no longer see the error for the app. Okay, now let's when I click the button, will call this function on button press, and then I want to show a message, right? I want to set show message to true. Now this message we have to show here in the template, so I'm going to add something. If show message is true, I will show a text hidden message. Now, to make this work, we got to use the curly brace here. So what's happening here is we have a variable that is either true or false. If this value is true, the right-hand side will be checked because this is an AND operation. If this is false, it stops right there. It doesn't even check the right-hand side. It returns the falsy value, which should be false. And React will understand false as something you don't want to render, therefore nothing will be shown. Okay, let's try it out to see if it's working. I'm gonna click or press click me, and I should be able to see hidden message now. If you have questions, let me know. if you ever have trouble with your app running, and if for some reason it's not updating, you can always reload the app. Let me show you how you can do it. You can either go and shake your phone, and it will bring up a menu if you shake it, and then you can click reload. That's one way. Another way is if you go to your development server terminal window, you'll notice here in the commands, there's one press R to reload the app. So if you press R in the terminal, it should reload the app as well. Okay, now let's do something more fun. Let's show an image. You can also show images with the image component. So let's call image here. So it's all spelled out, unlike HTML where it's abbreviated. And you can self-close it. And then it need a source. So you spell it all out, source. And for this one, you can pass an object with the property URI and pass a URL there. For example, I got this from the internet. I pasted the Zoom chat too. And let me see what happens. So you might notice there's no image. It doesn't recognize it, so we have to go to the top and add images anywhere here in the comma separated list. Add image, so it imports that. And then notice there's no image because we have to set the width and height of the image. So for the image component, add a new property here outside. Make sure it's outside this object. You can call it style and pass an object of width, for example, 200 and a height 200, like a square. And that should set the image. You should now be able to see an image on the screen. And there the image. Okay. So let me show you. Maybe you can make like an image gallery of sorts, image feed. But so let's say I had a list of images that I want to show, and you want to be able to scroll it to see them all, like a feed in social media or something. So basically, you would leverage image component, but then you need a list of images. We can make an array here and keep track of that in the state. Usually that would come from a backend server, but we can also do it just for show right now. We can show it from, let's make a variable here. Let's call it images, make an array. And I'm not starring the state because it's constant, but we want to change to use state for you taking it from the backend. So let's add an object here, and then let's call it ID1. And then we're going to do the URL. And I'm just going to use the same that we did here and just copy and paste. So let's make believe each object represents an image. And I'm going to use repeated ones, but you can later change it. Add 3 more here. 4, 5, oops. 4, 5, 6. So I got 6. I think that's enough to cover the whole screen, right? So we're going to use that here to generate new images. So the way we do it is we take the array images and we map. So the map operation will take for every element in the array, it will generate a new one. So there will be a new array of new elements. And those elements are defined in the argument to the map function. So you can return actually image there. So we can move this inside. By the way, I use the Alt up and down arrow to move things in Visual Studio Code. Now, because this is JSX, if you want the return value from this to be included here, substituted, you use the curly brace surrounding it. So what's happening, you have a callback function here that's called for every element of the array of images. And the argument is the actual image object. So you're going to start with this one, and you can do whatever you want and return a new value that will populate that new array. And then next go to the other one, and then next go to the other one, so on until the end. So basically it's a loop, a repetition. And make sure to return the actual image from that. And then for the URI here, you can take from the image object dot URL. That way it's not always constant. If you change that object, it will change there as well. Okay, let's take a look at what it looks like. So you can see you got all these images, but notice we only have 5 shown. How can we scroll down to see the other ones? I'm going to teach you in a moment. But you can notice this error here. This is because in React, whenever you map in JSX, you got to include the property key for each return value in the callback function. So it's very common. So let's fix that. We go here to the image. I add a key. That can be something unique, the image.id. If you don't have an ID or anything unique, you can use the second argument to the map. That should be an index. So if you add index and use that, you can do that as well. Anyway, that should fix the problem. Now let's talk about scrolling. So to scroll some of the screen, instead of using the view, you're going to use scroll view. And you just change that to scroll view. And then you can import at the top. You can add here scroll view. Now it's complaining about some scroll view child layout. So you apply it through the content container style. Because of this styling here. So you gotta remove that or use what they said, content container style. Content container style property. Okay, that should fix the problem. But still the scrolling is weird. And that's because probably that's CSS, those styles. So if I remove those styles here, let me try removing everything except the flex one. And then let's see. You can see hello world. Still 1, 2, 3, 4. Still not entirely correct, right? So something's going on with those styles. I think the flex, let's try changing it. I'll remove container style from that and see what happens. Now it works. Yeah, so usually you don't want to do that. So I remove the property and it should now be able to scroll correctly. So if you need scrolling, just put the outer view, make that a scroll view. Make sure to remove those any weird styles that you might have. Anyway, you might notice the top is a bit weird. In my case, I have iOS and I see the notch for my physical device covering the button. And also Hello World is way at the kind of the status bar that has the time and then the signal bars. So that sucks. So we gotta add some sort of padding to the top. So make sure it's always pushed down. So let me show you how we can do it in a nice way. So for that, we're gonna need expo constants. So let me get a name for you here. So if you go to package.json, we don't have expo-constants as dependencies. So we got to install it. So you go here to the terminal, npm install expo-constants. And it should be included now in your package.json. Let's power up the development server again. I see the QR code there. And we're gonna go to app. Let's see, for the scroll view, we can actually add an inner view here and set some styles on that. So if you add the inner view, you're gonna add the style here for the padding top. And that has to be, there's a constant we can use from Expo that already has the size, the height of the status bar. So we can use that. So we'll go to the top and we're gonna import constants from expo-constants. The name of the import could be expo constants or whatever. It doesn't matter. So this is how I'm going to call it here. So you're going to go where the padding top is and put constants dot. And then there's a property called status bar height that should give you back the number for the height. And with that, I should be able to see a better at the top. You can see hello world's been pushed down because of the padding at the top. Remember, padding is the inner spacing between the content and the border of a box. So now it's no longer overlapping with the status bar. And I can scroll just fine. Although it's interesting, the scrolling, it goes to the status. But I think that's normal, right? When you scroll things. Okay, let's see. Let's do something exciting. I will show you this website here, pick some photos, has an API that returns a list of objects with a image URL, this download URL here, and it gives you an image like this. So what if we use this? So we're going to call on this backend server that's fake, get this list of images, and then we're going to show that in the app. That way we have a varied uh, amount of images that's not repeated. So let's go here. So if you want to retrieve data in a React app, just like a React for the web, you're going to use the hook use effect. So somewhere here before return, let's do before this thing. You're going to call use effect. That's from React, or you can destructure or use the name the import. And this use effect will take a function that we executed every render of the component. If you want it only executed once, you can pass as a second argument an empty array of dependencies. So that means after the first rendering of this component, I want to call this function. This function will be called to retrieve the data from the backend server. So if you recall, I'm going to do this URL here. Now, to make a HTTP request from React Native, it's the same way using the web's fetch API. So you can just call the fetch function, pass the URL, and this will by default be a GET request, and it will return a promise, and then it can handle the same way you do with JavaScript for the web. You can do .then, right? The promise is going to fulfill a value eventually, and that's going to take time, therefore we must handle that. Once the promise is fulfilled, the function that is passed to the .then will be called with that response object. And then here you would check if response is okay. I leave that as to do. And assuming it's a happy path, we can return the response.json function call to extract the body of the response and then convert that to JavaScript object notation, which in this case will be an array of objects. And that also returns a promise. Therefore, at outside, it must handle with the .then, another one. And this .then, when the response body is extracted, we'll call this function here that we pass to .then. And the function will have the actual array of images. Let's call it image list. And then here I can finally take that data and store in the React state so that React will know that, oh, we retrieved a new list of images. Therefore, let's do some work to show them on the screen. We don't have something keeping track of images yet, so we got to scroll up. And instead of using a hard-coded array here, I'm going to change that. So we're going to make it empty by default and pass that to react.useState. And remember, useState returns two things, so we must destructure with the square brackets. And the second one will be the function to change images that I call set images. So once we got that, I should be able to call set images here with the image list as the argument. Therefore, whatever received from the server will be now stored in the images variable here. And because it's stored there, React will see that the state changed, therefore the component has to be re-rendered. And when it reaches the mapping operation, which is initially an empty thing, will now be populated and will generate all of these images. And there's one detail though, the URI of the image is wrong because the image object that is passed here is no longer has the URI. You have to change the download URL because that's what the server response returns. So you make sure to do this here. All right, let's see what we got now. Maybe that's too many images. As you can see, we now got different images, and I think there's way too many, so maybe we should have limited the API response with the underscore limit query. So that's cool. All right, so let's go back. I want to show you maybe how to debug this. Maybe you're interested in the response from the images to better understand. Maybe there's some more data we can use. Maybe show some text there for every image under the image. So I'll show you how to debug using the developer tools. So what you gotta do is you shake your phone. Sometimes it doesn't work. Let's go. Shake, shake, shake. Come on. Okay. There you go, finally. You see there's an option Open JS Debugger. So you're gonna press that. Now, if you're using, when I first used this on a Mac, which is I'm using right now, it's gonna ask for permissions and it might not work the first time. So make sure to grant permission to open the browser. Once you do that, you should be able to see a DevTools window open on your computer. There's also another way of opening the debugger through the terminal that has the development server. So if you go there, you notice there's an option J that you can press to open the debugger. So if you cannot do it through the phone, you can do it through the terminal by pressing J to open debugger. Okay, enough of that. Let's go back to the DevTools. I'll teach you how you can set up breakpoints to analyze that response from the server. So here, let me increase the zoom, see if I can. Why isn't it let me? Doesn't seem to work. Anyway, click sources and we're gonna press Control P and look for the file that has the code that you want. In this case, app.js. And it should open that same file here. And then you can set up breakpoints. For example, I'm interested in what the server returned. So I can go here where we are about to call set images. I can go to the line number, click to set up a breakpoint. And then the next time I load the app, let me reload it here. I click reload in my phone. It should be hitting the breakpoint right now. Let me see. Let's see, why is it not doing that? Let me click on return, reload. It's not stopping. Anyway, I don't know why it's not stopping. Sometimes it acts weird and it doesn't do the thing it's supposed to do. Let me try again. OpenJS debugger. Share from DevTools. Sources. Go to the terminal. Okay, let me do something to make that trigger. Let's try putting a button here that will trigger that fetch. So we're gonna make a function here. Retrieve data. This function will do this fetch operation. And then I'm gonna call it from here. But I'm also gonna be able to call it from the button press. So if I add a new button here, let's say button title, retrieve images on press. Here you can pass a function. You can either define it or you can put it inline. You can also pass functions inline like this. And this one is basically going to call retrieve data when I press the button. Let's see if the DevTools will trigger when I press. Okay, now it's triggering. I don't know why. Apparently, I didn't reload the app, so when it saved again, it's now triggered here. But okay. So let's see. So you can go here and look at image list. Let's see, play. I'm gonna press retrieve images to see if it's working. Now it's stopped here. You can open a terminal. Let's see what's going on. Image list. And you got the images there, which is 30 of them. And you can see each object has these properties of which we used only download URL. So we could actually use the author name here. So let's go ahead and do that. And before I do it, you can always remove your breakpoints by removing here. And then you can close the DevTools when you're done. Okay, so you can press play to go on. Let me go back to the code. And here where we got the mapping of image, I can surround that with a view so that I can add a text next to it. For example, under that, I will add some text with the image dot author, I think, right? You recall. Try that, and we should see the author name under it. Now, it'd be nice if we could have a separation between them. So for the view, we can add style with a margin to the bottom, and you can add 16, for example, and this should be more far apart. You can also make the text a little bit farther from the image by either changing the style of the text with a margin to the top or the margin bottom of the image. Either way, if you were to do the image, you add here margin bottom or 8, for example. For the text, you can also increase the size of the font by adding style here with font size property. For example, if you do 16, it should be bigger. So it's just like CSS, except the name of the properties has to be in camel case, which is the first letter of the first word is lowercase, and every subsequent word has the first letter capitalized. Okay. Yeah, so let's look. So you could go on and add more information and format and the styling to make it look better. Maybe you can make the image take the width of the whole screen and then adjust the height accordingly. And then you can add borders, colors, make them cards, something like that. Just copy whatever your favorite app is and make it look like that.